targeting the opposition in Venezuela, carnage in Kabul, and pulling out of the Paris deal. Kenya opened a 290-mile railway between the capital Nairobi and the port city of Mombasa, the country's largest infrastructure project since gaining independence in 1963. The $3.2 billion cost was largely underwritten by a loan from China as part of that country's initiative for global infrastructure. The passenger and cargo railway is supposed to eventually connect several landlocked African countries to the Indian Ocean. Russian opposition leader Alexei Navalny has been ordered to take down a video investigating government corruption. A Moscow court sided with Alisher Usmanov, a Russian businessman, who filed a lawsuit saying the video defamed him, but it already has 21 million views on YouTube and helped set off huge anti-corruption protests across the country in March, where hundreds, including Navalny, were arrested. Navalny says he will not delete the video or publish a retraction and plans to appeal the ruling.
Если система и даже в виде судебной системы так защищает это жулье и варье, значит, с этой системой нужно бороться еще сильнее.
Ohio is suing 5 of the largest pharmaceutical companies that manufacture prescription painkiller medications. The state's attorney general says evidence will show that the companies flooded the market with misleading information about the risks of opioids. One of the accused companies, Janssen Pharmaceutical, responded, calling the allegations unfounded. Next summer, NASA is going to send its Parker Solar Probe closer to the Sun than has ever been attempted.
Now, 4 million miles may not sound that close to you, but if the Earth and the Sun were separated by 1 meter, we would be at 4 centimeters from the Sun. So it's actually very, very close.
The unmanned spacecraft will have to withstand unprecedented levels of heat and radiation. It will collect data about how the Earth responds to the Sun, help with storm forecasting, and broaden our understanding of stars. Lebanon has banned the movie Wonder Woman from being shown in the country because an Israeli actress, Gal Gadot, plays the lead role.
عندما تقاطع فيلما قد يخاف المنتج من أن يصدر فيلما آخر من نفس الممثلة وأن يرسله إلى البلد نفسه. هكذا تعمل المقاطعة.
Lebanon is officially at war with Israel and has a decades-old law enforcing a boycott of Israeli products and stopping Lebanese from traveling to Israel or having contacts with Israelis. Today in Caracas, Henrique Capriles, the leader of the Venezuelan opposition, is back on his feet and in the streets with demonstrators after being tear-gassed and beaten by soldiers while leading a march on a government office on Monday. The direct attack on Capriles, a governor and former presidential candidate, signals a drastic escalation by Nicolas Maduro's government, which is suppressing resistance with the violent desperation of an embattled regime.
Maduro está haciendo todo para que este país llegue a una situación de anarquía, de estado fallido, que tenemos que evitar los venezolanos y por eso estamos en las calles.
Just hours after the attack, Capriles sat down for an interview with Vice co-founder Soroush Alvi, who spent the last few days with the opposition in Caracas.
So in Caracas now, they're marching and protesting 4 out of the 7 days of the week. And we're going to march with everyone a couple miles to the highway where everyone's congregating. There are many, many opposition parties, and together they're under one big umbrella. They all come together and they are protesting Maduro's regime. There are marches happening all over the city. Everybody is congregating in one place there. So the tear gas has already started, as you can tell, because everybody's just switched directions and coming back towards us now. We're at the back of the march right now, and I can feel the tear gas already. Let's get our masks on.
We're in the thick of it now. These kids are making Molotov cocktails, they're smashing boulders, making smaller rocks to throw.
Tear gas everywhere. This is a citizens' revolution. You can feel it on the streets. People aren't afraid, they're ready to fight.
Pretty soon, we got word that Henrique Capriles, opposition leader and governor of the second largest state in Venezuela, had been beaten down by the National Guard.
We're outside the Justice First office. The head of the party, Henrique Capriles, just got beat down by the National Guard here, and there's still tear gas and clashing going on. They're about to do a press conference. Gracias.
Tengo un cascazo que me dieron en el rostro.
We spoke with Miguel Pizarro, a lawmaker and rising star of the opposition.
Was today unprecedented?
Was a new level.
Really?
Operation, a new level.
The video shows Carlos Paparoni, an assembly member, being brutally hosed down by a water cannon during the same protest.
This one is a member of the parliament. This guy.
That's a member of parliament?
That's a congressman.
That's crazy.
Then we had a chance to speak with the governor himself.
Hello, Governor. How are you?
Hola.
Nice to meet you. Mucho gusto.
Bien, ¿hablas español?
No.
Ah, no.
Sorry.
Imagine a U.S. Marine, governor of, I don't know, New York.
Yeah. You've been out there marching, almost every day for the last 2 months. Why did things get worse today? Why did they get more aggressive today?
This is an incredible country, Venezuela. Have the largest oil reserve in the world. Venezuela has everything. There's no reason that we don't have food. There's no reason. So, and Maduro does not want elections. He wants, right? He's saying that he's going to change the constitution, and he wants to make his constitution. You know how much is the income of a worker here in Venezuela? Less than $40 a month. $30. How can you live with $30? That's impossible. So what we do? We are fighting in the streets. Fighting for democracy. Fighting for a change.
This morning in Kabul, more than 90 people were killed when a suicide bomber detonated a truck bomb during rush hour. The blast site was in the neighborhood where several Western embassies are located. Security barriers prevented more serious damage, but the blast caused significant destruction at the German embassy. The explosion left a crater nearly 14 feet deep. Windows were shattered up to a mile away. Afghan's public health ministry says there are more than 460 casualties, including 11 Americans. The attack, which came in the first week of the holy month of Ramadan, is believed to be one of the worst in the Afghan capital's history. Vice News spoke with The Guardian's Sune Engel Rasmussen, who's based in Kabul.
Well, when the explosion happened around 8:30 local time this morning, I was at home about a kilometer away from the bomb site, but it felt like it was much closer. The whole house was shaking and the windows were shaking. So since late 2014, when the majority of foreign combat troops left Afghanistan, the security situation around the country has deteriorated markedly. Civilians are dying and are being injured in higher numbers than ever. And last year was the deadliest year for Afghan civilians since 2001. This permanent threat of becoming a victim of a terrorist attack is growing.
The Paris Climate Agreement in 2015 was a really big deal.
We got a deal!
Only 2 countries didn't sign on, Nicaragua and Syria. But according to reports, it looks like the United States may be joining them. President Trump played a little bit coy in the Oval Office today when he was meeting with the Vietnamese Prime Minister.
Are you leading in a direction, sir?
I'm hearing from a lot of people both ways.
The president promised while on the campaign trail to pull out of the Paris Agreement. But now that he's at the White House, there's a faction who thinks it might be a better idea to stay in. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson endorsed that position at his confirmation hearing. And at his old company, ExxonMobil, who had a shareholders meeting today, the new CEO said this.
We think the goal of carbon policy should be to reduce emissions at the lowest cost to society. These principles led us to support the Paris Agreement as an effective framework for international action.
It's not just about businesses. Our friends and allies in the world have put on the pressure, and at the G7 last week, the 6 other countries involved reaffirmed their commitment to Paris and also threw some shade on the U.S. in the official statement. Quote, the United States of America is in the process of reviewing its policies on climate change and on the Paris Agreement, and thus is not in a position to join the consensus on these topics. Here's why that matters, apart from the actual climate considerations. The Paris Agreement is a good faith deal, and if the United States pulls out, we may be seen as a country that you can't make that kind of deal with. That has huge implications for our national security and trade policy. So that hands a big win to China. Even as one of the world's biggest emitters of greenhouse gases, they've reiterated their commitment to Paris, and they're actually on track to exceed their goals, as is India. Nathan Holtman helped negotiate the international climate deal.
Countries have all these relationships that they cultivate with other countries, and the more positive relationships it has, the more scope for action it potentially has in the future. The more friends China has, the more kind of they can do in terms of building out their economy, their exports, their bilateral relations, and of course the way that other countries react to their, the way that they want to behave in the international community. So again, we're in early days here, but this does again fit into a Chinese approach to the world where they're trying to say, look, we are looking out for you. When you're faced with a choice, you in the developing world, many people in the developing world, many countries are deeply concerned about the impacts of climate change on their agricultural systems, on flooding, on drought, on their people's well-being.
From a much larger perspective, does it give sort of our international partners pause when trying to make other kinds of deals with us?
It's never a single topic that sort of affects sort of the bilateral and multilateral decisions that countries engage in. It's really the aggregate of all the engagements that the United States does with Europe and all the engagements the United States does with China. When the U.S. makes a big decision like this one, that other countries nearly universally globally have said is a very high, if not top priority for them, it's a major piece of how they interact with the United States.
Earlier this month, a 42-year-old named Philip Clay was found dead in Seoul, South Korea, from an apparent suicide. Clay was one of an unknown number of Korean adoptees who were brought to the United States as children and then deported back to South Korea as adults. Over the course of 4 months, J. Caspian Kang followed the story of one of them, a Korean adoptee named Adam Krapser.
In 1955, a farmer in Oregon named Harry Holt adopted 8 Korean children who had been displaced by the Korean War.
Is adopting 8 tiny Koreans and taking 4 to other Americans.
Holt and his wife set up an agency to deliver orphans from Korea to families in the States. Since then, over 150,000 Korean children have been adopted by American families. In 1979, the Holt Agency brought over a 3-year-old named Shin Sung-hyuk and placed him with a Christian family in the States. As an adult, he learned that because of an oversight during the adoption process, he wasn't a U.S. citizen. And at the age of 41, he found out that he was going to be deported back to Korea.
What have you been doing to prepare for a life in what is essentially a foreign country to you?
I have a little book that it's like a tourist book kind of. I try to learn a little bit of, some of the words, and this is a pretty difficult situation to go through. I know I've been separated from my family, I've been separated from the people I care about and the life that I know, and I'm about to go somewhere that's going to be completely foreign to me.
When he first arrived in America, Sung-hyuk's new family changed his name to Adam, but they didn't fill out the H-3 document, a routine form that grants citizenship to international adoptees. 6 years later, Adam's adopted parents decided they didn't want him anymore and called an adoption agency. The adoption agency called Jackie Fleming.
I was told by the social worker that his welfare was seriously in danger. So I dropped everything and I went with her to pick him up. And he was sitting on the curb waiting for us to come get him. He was 62 pounds, very quiet. He didn't seem to show a lot of emotion. I could tell that he was very depressed and just totally didn't know where he belonged.
Are there any memories you have of those first days that you were with him?
Well, you know, he wasn't really responding too much to us at that time. And as time grew on, you know, we got closer to him, and at night he would always, at first I had to coax him to come sit in the chair with me, and then later on he would show up every night to sit in that chair with me. So I took it upon myself. I called Children's Services and asked them about Adam, you know, we'd like to be on the list to adopt him. And they said, well, we've already got a list of families in line. I wasn't allowed to see him anymore. For 32 years, you know, we were thinking he was happy.
After living with Jackie and her family for more than a year, Adam was adopted by another family, the Capriles, who lived in Salem, Oregon. The abuse started almost as soon as Adam moved in. He was beat with a 2x4, burned, and thrown in piles of dog feces. The Capriles had several adopted kids, and none of them were spared. Thomas and Dolly Capriles would ultimately be convicted on charges of physical and sexual abuse. We reached out to the Capriles for comment, but did not hear back.
Do you have anything to say to the family that adopted you?
Understand that children grow up to be adults, and they carry around with them everything that you show them or do to them, you affect them. I don't give them the power to know that they destroyed my life.
When he was still a teenager, Adam broke into the Capriles' home to take back the only possessions he had brought with him from Korea, a pair of rubber shoes and a Korean language Bible. He was caught and sentenced to 2 years in prison.
I guess at the end of the day, it's not really so much what happens to you, but how you handle what happens to you. And for the majority of my life, I've handled everything wrong. You know, I've reacted when I shouldn't have. I talked when I should have been quiet, a lot of things. And I'm learning a lot through this whole process.
Adam's troubles with the law didn't stop there. He got into a lot of fights and was convicted of assault, weapons charges, and domestic violence. But he eventually settled down. He had a barbershop, worked on cars, got married, and started a family. By then, Adam realized that his immigration papers had never been filed. And in 2012, he applied for a green card, which triggered a background check by the Department of Homeland Security. By law, Adam was an undocumented immigrant and a convicted felon. ICE opened up deportation proceedings in 2015.
I always considered myself American. I just never could get my foot in the door kind of and be this American I wanted to be. You know, adoption is a hard thing to deal with your whole life usually. And a lot of people carry around a lot of hard feelings. A lot of people, like me, don't know what it's like to grow up in stability or to have a family, you know?
Unfortunately, in cases like Adam's, where the immigrant has certain criminal convictions, essentially what it means is that there's mandatory deportation. The judge has zero discretion. That's the system that Congress created, and our fear is really that under the new administration, things are just going to get worse.
Why was the action taken when it was and not at any of the other times when he was arrested?
So in the last 15 years, there's essentially been a huge uptick in immigration enforcement, where we've seen immigration officials get more and more aggressive about going after people, and particularly people like Adam who have old criminal convictions.
I'd be lying if I said I'm not terrified, but it's mixed with a little bit of excitement. It's mixed with a little bit of finality, you know, for me.
Three weeks after Adam's deportation, I met him in Seoul. By law, when Adam returned to Korea, his name reverted back to the one on his birth certificate. He is now Shin Sung-hyuk again. Adam lives in a tiny studio apartment.
You got a haircut, I noticed.
Yeah, I cut it. When I got here, I got the Korean little boy haircut that everybody has over here with the bangs. The lady didn't speak any English, and I was trying to explain to her. She didn't have any of the equipment I'm used to in America, so basically the haircut I left here with, and it's what I came back with. Well, I got lost here one day. I was about 4 blocks from here because I got dropped off at a cab. Somebody asked me, "Oh, is this where you live?" And I look up, and it looked like it. So I said, "Yeah." And so I got out and was walking. And I was like, "This is not the way." And I got lost. I just felt handicapped. I mean, I stayed in here all day yesterday. I didn't go anywhere.
Why? Because
I didn't want to get lost. I'd be screwed if I didn't have any help right now. And I mean, I think about killing myself every single day that I'm here. And it's like, I'm not really that guy. But being here is like, it's a reality that's really hard to deal with. I spent 38 years of my life in the States, and I killed myself for 20 of those years just to be able to make a stable life for myself and have a family. And now I'm here living out of a couple suitcases. You know, there's things here that I guess that I'm seeing right now that are kind of comforting in a way. I'm just another Korean face in the crowd, you know? I mean, they're not looking at me like, "Oh, you're from America." They don't know that right away.
Adam needs to start making a living. He's hoping that he can open a barbershop just like he did in the States. Today, he's going to scout out locations in Itaewon, the expat neighborhood in Seoul that houses an American Army base.
Hey, what's up, man? I just came by to just check out your shop. I just got deported from America back here. I was adopted to the States 38 years ago. And so I'm finding an area where maybe I might open up a shop, or I might, because I used to braid and I had a black barber shop in America. Yeah, somebody told me about it. I just came by to check it out, see what you guys had going on. Yeah. All right, man, thank you.
Once someone's deported from the United States, it's extremely difficult to come back. There are a few things that can be done. For example, they could try to get a pardon either from the governor of the state where they were convicted or from the president. Unfortunately, right now, a pardon is really a Hail Mary pass.
Adam's wife went to visit him in Seoul 3 months after he was deported. He's hoping that she and the kids will join him in Korea soon, but no plans have been made, and he's still exploring legal options to come back home.
I don't know if one day, you know, I'll get a call and they'll say, "Oh, you can go back to the United States." How I'll feel about that. My hope is that somehow we'll all kind of find our place. Hi, baby. You feeling better? I love you.
Before he was deported, Adam submitted a statement to an immigration judge.
Hi, baby.
He wrote, "America promised me a home. When I was sent to America, the possibility of being Korean was left behind. The language, the culture, whatever family I might have had.
Night-night.
But my children do have a whole family and their whole lifetimes in front of them. I just want to do right by them. I want to have a chance to watch them grow up healthy and happy. I implore this country to keep its promise. If not for me, then for my children, so they won't have to grow up without a dad."
Last night's top story on the internet. A dark tale wherein millions of Americans ganged up to cyberbully a quasi-literate man over one misspelled word. It all happened in a tweet. Despite the constant negative press, you know what? Let's just leave this to the professional comedians.
Covfefe.
Covfefe. Covfefe. Covfefe. Adesso covfefe. Covfifi.
Confifi.
Covfifis.
Covfefe.
Confifis.
Who knows why it happened? Maybe his hands were too small to reach all the letters. Maybe, instead of writing coverage, He mashed his entire face on his unsecured iPhone as he drifted off into a presidential slumber. But the internet doesn't care for reasons. It only cares for memes. So many memes. Websites were registered. New characters were created just to engage in the conversation surrounding Kofifi and its true meaning. The internet took Kofefi and shoved it through its mandatory pop culture reference initiation ritual. Twitter's fun police were quick to point out that while everyone was busy laughing about Kofefe, the US is expected to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. It was even suggested the typo was a strategic distraction, because we all know humans are famously unable to have more than one thought simultaneously, and to laugh at one thing means we're unable to process another. For Trump supporters, the latest mistake by the president was just further evidence of how he's a real and deeply flawed human, just like them. Then, 6 hours later, something truly remarkable happened. This tweet. Sure, the president thinks climate change is a Chinese hoax, but now he's a president who thinks climate change is a Chinese hoax and can make a joke about himself. And that, my friends, is kerfuffle. I'm in progress.
That's Vice News Tonight for Wednesday, May 31st.